Begin this meeting because we have several people to talk about contracts, at least Bob. Dale keeps talking. So we're here for the Education, Environment, and Sustainability Committee meeting Wednesday, July 18, 2018. Can we have a roll call?
Calling the roll, Ms. Simon.
I'm here.
Ms. Brown. Here. Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Mr. Schrein. Here. Mr. Brady. Here. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Council members Baker and Miller are in attendance.
So we have some minutes. Mr. Jones, Councilman Jones cannot make it today, so we'll proceed without him. We have a quorum. So we have minutes from June 20th, 2018. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
We approve the minutes as presented.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Minutes are approved from the last meeting, and today we're here, first of all, with any public comment?
No,
related?
Madam Chair.
Okay. I skipped that. And then our only matter referred as a master contract with several providers. And if you can read Ordinance 2018-0153.
Resolution number 2018-0153, making awards on requisition number 41540 to various providers in the total amount not to exceed $8,218,111 for universal pre-kindergarten in Cuyahoga County for the period 8/1/2018 through 7/31/2020.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we have Bob Stape here to discuss the universal pre-K contracts for the next, I guess, 2 years. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Is that better? Sorry. My name is Bob Stabe. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of Early Childhood. I'm here on behalf of Rebecca Dorman, our Director, who regrets that she can't be here. She's on her way back from Early Childhood Conference in San Diego. Madam Chair, before I start, I wanted to just very quickly introduce the members of the team who are here today. You know, anytime we submit a master services contract, there are literally hundreds of pieces of paper that have to be retrieved and uploaded. These are the folks who did it. I want to give them the credit. In the front row is Dr. Shauna Rohrman, who is our evaluation manager. Behind her, Kiana Tidmore, who's the program manager. Alyssa Swiatek, who's our family engagement coordinator. And then last but not least, Dan Moss, who is also our program manager. So we wouldn't be here without them, and I just wanted to acknowledge all the work that they've done. Okay, how do I do this? Oh, great. Okay, so let's get started. I just wanted to very quickly talk about Universal Pre-Kindergarten, or UPK as we call it. This is Cuyahoga County's high-quality preschool program that was developed about 12 years ago. It's comprehensive, it's voluntary, it's high-quality care for 3 to 5-year-olds. We have a whole range of providers from community-based providers, private preschools, Head Start providers, and licensed family child care home. Some of the key features, which I'll talk more about in just a second, are the low staff-child ratios, credentialed teachers, and family engagement and tuition assistance. So let me just quickly drill down on some of the distinctive features that make UPK unique. It's important for me to emphasize that UPK is what we call an enhancement model. We don't create child care slots. We take existing high-quality sites and make them even better. We enhance them with our resources, and we make them more accessible to families. So just to go through my little chart here quickly, starting in the upper left, scholarship assistance. Scholarship assistance is available to families earning up to 400% of the federal poverty level. It's a sliding scale, so those at the bottom would get 50%. From 200 to 300, they'd get 33%, and then from 300 to 400, it would be 25%. And this is a discount that's passed right through the provider to the families. Moving to clockwise, teacher support. This is the part of the program where we rely heavily on Starting Point, who's our partner agency who provides technical assistance and training. Those providers will come into the classroom, work with teachers to develop a professional development plan for each teacher, and then we'll connect those teachers with scholarship resources so they can attend school and get advanced credentials. Then moving in a clockwise direction, quality improvement. This is where about 2/3 of all of these dollars go. And what we like to emphasize here is that these funds are flexible in that Providers can use them for equipment. They can use them for supplies. Some providers have installed an outdoor classroom. They can do field trips. They can bring in specialists into the classrooms. But they can also use these dollars in other ways. They can offer benefits or salary enhancements to their providers in order to keep teachers in the classroom. They also get support here in dealing with children who have special needs of various sorts. And then continuing clockwise to family supports. This is our family engagement program. We know that children do best in environments where their parents are actively engaged in the school program, and we have a whole range of programs to support that as well. So just a couple housekeeping points. In the past, you've probably heard us talk about UPK 1, UPK 2. Okay, we're getting rid of all of that. No more. It's just UPK. The contracts that we brought forward last year at this time are scheduled to end in July of 2020. Those are 3-year contracts. These are 2-year contracts. Everybody ends in July of 2020. That year, we'll do an RFP in January and then just come back with one package of contracts for you. Programmatically, they're all identical at this point. They're all doing the same thing. And the total system now looks like 68 sites serving almost approximately 5,000 children throughout the county. So it's getting to be a big program. Most of the sites that we are bringing forward today have been with us. Historically, they've been our UPK1 sites. We have 2 that are brand new to the system. One is called Cirque de Kids. They're located in Garfield Heights. And the other is the Urban Community School, which is on the west side of Cleveland. All right, a quick rundown of how these providers were selected. As last year, we send a notice of the availability of the RFP to every provider that has a step up to quality rating of at least 3 stars, 3, 4, and 5 stars. There were 240 such providers who received the notice. 45 submitted proposals. From that, we made awards to 33 sites that are operated by 20 agencies for the total of $8,218,110. And then I've given you a little breakdown there. So of the 33 sites we're presenting today, 3 are public school districts, 15 are Head Start sites, 14 are center-based sites, and 1 is a family child care home, bringing in a total of 1,854 new UPK seats to our system. Incidentally, I did a quick analysis. Of the 33 sites, 18 are located in the city of Cleveland, 15 are in the balance of the county. In a minute, we'll be looking at a map so you can see exactly where they are. Oh, actually, no, we'll be looking at that right now. And you have a paper copy of this map in front of you. I've also provided you with a key to the map, and it's there's 2 versions of the key. One is just a numerical version, but the other side is a version arranged by council district, so you can see where these different sites fall. Okay, moving along, just some very quick trend data. This is the graph of what the enrollment, or the capacity, I should say, of UPK has been since its inception in 2007. So you can see we've got a nice upward trend there. To give you just a little bit of a context, we estimate that around the county there are almost 16,000 children who would benefit from UPK and also whose parents would be likely inclined to send them to preschool. So at 5,000 slots, we're about a third of the way there, okay? So we're getting to about a third of the children who we would ideally like to serve. We'd like to be serving all of them. In terms of our enrollment, typically this year enrollment has ranged from about 85% to 90%. In March, it was at 90%. So that's considered pretty good in preschool terms. So now, before I take some questions from you, I wanted to talk a little bit about the impact of UPK, because this would all just be bells and whistles unless we could justify why we're spending millions of dollars. So what we want to show, and I'm going to ask Dr. Roman to do this for us, is not just that UPK children do better than children who get no preschool, but that UPK children do better than children who are in high-quality preschool, okay? Which is how our efforts pay off, so that we can justify, not just to you, but to the taxpayers about why we're doing this. So let me ask Dr. Roman to come up. She has a couple slides that she's going to present to you, and then we'll take some questions.
Hi there. So our office has been working with Case Western since UPK started to evaluate the UPK program and determine its impact. Right now we're in the middle of our most rigorous evaluation to date. It's being funded by a grant from the Department of Education. And so in this evaluation, we're looking at kindergarten readiness for kids who attended a UPK program compared to kids who attended a high quality but not UPK program, since that's the enhancement model that we work with. And we're focusing on kids who got what we're calling a high dose of preschool, which would be 9 months in the year before kindergarten if they only went for 1 year, or 18 months in the 2 years before kindergarten if they went for the 2 years before. And so we first looked at how children did on the language and literacy domain of the kindergarten readiness assessment. And just taking a simple comparison, what we found is that among the kids who got a high dose in the year before kindergarten, 59% of UPK kids were on track for language and literacy, and 54.3% of non-UPK kids were on track. If you restrict that only to the kids who went for the 2 years before kindergarten, so starting preschool at age 3 and getting a high dose over those 2 years, we found that the achievement was higher, particularly for UPK kids. So almost 70% of UPK kids who went for 18 or more months in the 2 years before kindergarten were on track, compared to 44% of kids in non-UPK programs. So just a very descriptive, simple comparison shows that especially for kids who are getting early exposure to preschool, UPK has an impact compared to the high-quality non-UPK programs. But you might wonder, what about all of these other factors? Maybe there are differences between kids who go to UPK and kids who don't. And so we adjusted for 15 different factors, which I have a list at the end that I'll show you. So we adjusted for 15 different demographic factors to see if that impact still holds for UPK, and we found that it did. So I'm going to focus here just on the kids who got 18 or more months. We found that UPK kids, when you took account of all of those other factors, were 2.67 times more likely to be on track for language and literacy compared to the kids in high-quality non-UPK sites. If the kids who had gone to a non-UPK program had instead attended UPK, you would see 63.1% of them being on track for language and literacy compared to 44.1%. So a 19 percentage point increase in the readiness for UPK versus non-UPK. And then we also looked at another domain of the KRA, which is the social foundations. It's a socio-emotional assessment. And we found that compared to the non-UPK kids, UPK children scored 6.16 points higher on this social foundations dimension. And so some of the factors that we adjusted for include individual level factors like age, gender, race, birth weight, whether they were premature at birth, substantiated reports of maltreatment, lead poisoning, family factors such as duration of poverty, mom's education at the time of the child's birth, how much they've moved around, whether they've experienced homelessness, and then also an index that summarizes concentrated disadvantage in their neighborhood. So because we control for all of these factors, we are confident, this means that none of these are explaining why we see this UPK impact, which leads us to believe that it's something about the program and not something about the children that is leading to this difference.
All right, Madam Chair. Last, just my thanks to Council for its ongoing support of this important program. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. And we're happy to take questions.
Committee members, any questions? Councilwoman Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I wanted to know on the slide that breaks down the 4 categories, is there a percentage breakdown or how much dollars we spend per category there?
You know, I don't have that, but I could certainly do that for you.
Okay.
Hold on, let me just make a note. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And then you said there were 85 to 90% of the seats filled. So is that of the 4,600, 85 to 95% of those seats are filled? So we do have some availability.
Correct.
Okay. The additional resources that are available that aren't being utilized, are they being rolled over to the next year? What happens to that money?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And we are, if I just might add, we have engaged a marketing consultant to work with churches to help promote the availability, help with enrollment, to help our sites with enrollment.
Okay. Those were my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Schron and then Miller.
Well, I know this comes up regularly, but every time. Why? There's got to be. With the communities that I have out in my district.
I did it.
I know there's some that have financially struggling.
There are 20 that got 20 either 3, 4, or 5-star facilities somewhere in District 6. They all got a notice. We didn't get an application from any of them.
Next time, include me on it, and I'll just at least
that.
ping them that way and say, hey, these are your tax dollars at work here too, and shame on you if you're not applying. And I'm not trying to give any tip of if they're not entitled to it, but by the same token, they got to get off their something and make application.
We have to walk a fine line, of course.
No, I understand. We're not trying to be any homers.
But I can, as soon as I get back to the office tomorrow, I'll send you a list of the 20 that got them. And they're all, there's a couple in Brecksville, there's a couple in Chagrin, and then in 2 years we can share the list. Hopefully it will be larger 2 years from now as more sites get involved with Step Up to Quality and earn a 3 or a 4-star. But I can get you a list right now.
But I guess I was thinking because you have a financial impact that has to be in order to be eligible too, do they not? You're talking about in relationship to poverty and as far as whether they're eligible to, as far as, no?
No, in terms of the children served, no. Any child who lives in Cuyahoga County can be served. The income eligibility is for the scholarship.
Oh, just for the scholarship, okay.
Just for the scholarship.
Thank you, okay.
So the technical training for teachers and family support can be without any kind of limitation in terms of eligibility?
Yeah. Absolutely, no, and we even, one of our rules is that if you're a UPK site, then every child has to have a UPK experience. But if there's a site in Berea that might be serving a child from Lorain County, they can't bill us for that child, but that child still has to get a UPK experience.
So I want to follow up with Councilwoman Brown and then move back down to Miller. So could you get a follow-up?
Thank you. Actually, with regards to the schools, you broke them down. There are 15 Head Starts, 14 center-based, 1 home-based. I clearly missed something because that's 30, and there are 33 schools. So did I miscalculate?
That's 33.
It's 33.
15, 14, and 1?
Is 30, and then the three
public schools. That's what I missed. So the 3 public schools, and you said there were 2: the Cirque de Kids and the Urban Community Schools. So is that a specific name of a school, or is that a category, a group of schools? The
no,
Urban
that's
Community.
a specific. That's one entity, and I believe it's a charter school. I'm not 100%, or a private school. It's a K through 8 school, but they have a preschool program that is now a UPK program.
And the name of the school is the Urban Community School.
Correct.
I'm missing that one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said that there were 16,000 children that would benefit from UPK. Is this the full range of children, or is this only children that would be considered somewhat at risk or economically or developmentally at risk?
So by Case Western's calculations, there are 22,500 children, preschool-age children in the county. And then we looked at the percentage of those children that are, or the number of children that are below 300% of the poverty line, which is our target population for the program, and that's where we get the 16. Wait, I'm sorry. Let's back up for a minute.
15.7, I rounded.
I'm sorry. 22,500 kids below 300% of poverty that are of preschool age. And then what we estimate is what's called a take-up rate of 70%. We assume that approximately 30% of children are in families that just wouldn't send them to preschool, or maybe would send them to a babysitter or somebody that they know to for childcare if they needed it. So that 16,000 is the 70% take-up rate of the children under 300% of poverty that are preschool age.
And if you were to add the 4,900 slots and the non-UPK slots, but that are of high quality, what total would you get?
It's about 10,000.
So we're starting to get there a little bit.
So some of those sites could theoretically be UPK sites tomorrow because they meet the requirements for the UPK program. Our program sets higher standards for teacher education than the state sets for its 3-star rating, which is the minimum level of quality for UPK. So I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would say maybe 1,500 seats are in programs that could tomorrow technically be UPK programs. The rest of them require some professional development for the teachers to get them to the education or professional development level that we require. The other issue is that they have to apply, right? So we can't just give them a spot in UPK. They have to apply to be part of it. And so I think that's what we would have to work on to get them in.
Okay, thank you.
Council President.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Do you have a specific goal that you're trying to, achieve that you're short of at this point? What is I may not have said it the best way, but what is your ideal?
Children prepared for school.
Sure, and but is your sense of that universal, or or how would you define that? Did I say that right?
Well, I mean, so in terms of these contracts, our overarching goal is children prepared for school. We have outcomes in the contracts that support that, and
Okay.
that for the providers, which is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean I didn't ask the question clearly enough. I didn't mean about. I wasn't really referring to this piece of legislation, and
Okay.
I was referring to the goals of what you're doing, and if you have some sense of that, or some sense of something over the next several years that you're trying to achieve, if you want to share with us anything about how you might, how that might be part of what your planning is, or am I just way off base?
No, I don't think you're off base. I mean, we work on sustainability of the current level of funding, but we are also working on what would it look like to, I think, take UPK to scale. So given the impact that we have shown in our evaluations, it works. So we'd like to, I don't know, I'm speaking for Rebecca. I don't know that that's, take it for what it's worth. She's not here to say this herself, but I would think we would want to be able to serve all of the kids who are under 300% with this model, because we're showing that it works. It's preparing children more than the other models are.
And is there, I'm sorry Rebecca's not here as well, but is there, and if that makes a difference, just let me know. But is there some sense of a time frame and about how that would be, what's realistic there? I'm not trying to make what you're doing more difficult by setting the bar higher. I'm very just trying to find out honestly.
Sure.
If there are, do you have a group of people who are discussing this? I mean, where's the?
So here's as much as I know. The additional money that the executive put into the budget, plus the ongoing money, should take us through 4 more years at the current level. There's a high-level partnership committee with the co-chairs are Armin Budish and Paul Clark. They've got sustainability like front and center in their radar, and they've got 4 years to figure that out. So, that would be, that's the plan. That's the plan.
Any work, I mean, Starting Point is a key partner in establishing what that timeline would look like, because they are the ones who coordinate the professional development for the region for the most part. Mm-hmm. So they really have to think about how much work it would entail and what the logistics of that expansion would look like in terms of how long it would take. But certainly the 4-year deadline is the one that's more pressing.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure resources would be, a fundamental element of that. That's kind of absolutely partly where we come in.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Baker.
Thank you. Couple questions. These are 3- and 4-year-olds we're talking about. 5-year-olds are entered into kindergarten.
So
is that correct?
Full definition is 3, 4, and 5-year-olds not eligible for kindergarten. It depends on where the child's birthday falls. Some kids who turn 5 don't go to kindergarten, but so that's our population. That's the age eligibility.
So it's a limited amount of 5-year-olds. Basically, it's 3- and 4-year-olds.
Correct.
With making exceptions for 5-year-olds that
so those
fall in it.
5-year-olds are included in the count that
okay.
Miller brought up.
And are these how many days a week? How many hours in a day? And when you compare apples to apples, are they the same as this 3 hours a day versus 8 hours a day? Some blend into daycare, and I mean, how do you
so
get your statistics?
We had to impose some standards because parent choice drives some of this, but we had to standardize it. So a provider can offer a part-time slot, and that has to be at least 12.5 hours a week, so that's 2.5 hours a day, or they can offer a full-time slot, which would be 25 or more hours per week.
So when you're judging or comparing this program with a non-UPK, how do you make sure that, parents who choose to put their child in a pre-K but don't want them there all day and maybe only want them there 3 days a week, and then maybe those that put them in will extend it to daycare and not, there's expenses that go along with keeping them in longer, and so they choose to do what they can with the resources they have. How do you compare that then to a child who might be there the extended amount of time, getting all of the UPK services? I just wonder, when you say that your services are above what those that are not UPK paid by the county, and you find that your success is better, how do you compare apples to apples when they can be so different?
So it's a great question. The nature of the data that we have on preschool experiences varies depending on the source of the data. So we are not able, within the UPK group, we could look to compare part day, full day. We don't have enough information to make that comparison between UPK and non-UPK, which means that we're implicitly operating under the assumption that there is no systemic difference in the full day, half day between UPK and non-UPK, that's a great question. So if there was a difference, then perhaps that's one of these unexplained factors.
Yeah.
Or unobserved factors, I guess.
Okay, because
that's a good
they
question.
can be so different. I don't know how you can compare the two, but having them ready for, and I guess we're going to call it kindergarten, having them ready for kindergarten, and they enter kindergarten and they're prepared and they do well in their kindergarten. How much better do they do in first grade, second grade, and the years above, given they were prepared going into kindergarten?
Thank you for asking.
Yes, okay. So the study that we're working on now, we wanted to look at third grade reading, but the cohorts that we have in the study, there just aren't enough kids that have made it to third grade to be able to make that comparison. One of our earlier studies also focused on this language and literacy, and what we found in that study was that kids who got a high dose of UPK were 30% more likely to pass the third grade reading. So we're basically relying on other literature to sort of make the connection between those two. Our hope is that when we have enough children who have reached third grade that we're able to make that comparison, that we can do that. There's also, there's some issues with how third grade reading tests have changed.
Yeah.
The tricky part in the grades in between is finding an assessment that all of the school districts that we have data for have used so that we can compare apples to apples. And we just haven't found that.
If I may, Chair, the third grade reading guarantee, that I would think, as you get more children coming up through the ranks, would be a pretty good gauge to know how many have been able to get through the third read, because that's a pretty standard test.
Yes.
If I could just quickly add, so part of what makes this kind of analysis possible is to enter into data agreements with the public school districts. So that's an ongoing challenge, but I can tell you we're making progress, and we have most of the inner ring suburbs now. So we are asking for the third grade reading test, but we're also asking for other kinds of data, attendance data, and some other kinds of things. So depending on what we get, and again, if we can get it from enough districts, then we can take a deeper look at how our children fare compared to other children.
The parent piece that you had on your slide, how successful have you been, and what does the parent, as they're engaged in this program, what is the expectations of that parent who agrees to put their child in the UPK program? What is their responsibility?
So each of the sites has to work with a technical assistance provider from Starting Point to develop a family engagement plan, and that can consist of a whole range of different kinds of activities. There's a model that involves volunteering and communication with the parents. All of the sites have a parent action team that will plan events. Donuts for dads and other kinds of things that they do. So there's an expectation that all parents would be involved. We're not going to penalize anybody if they don't meet that expectation, but there's an expectation that 100% of the parents would be involved. And we're constantly working on new strategies around how to make that happen.
Your expectation is 100%. What is the reality? How many do you get to come to your... Because parent participation is a pretty big piece of making sure these children are ready, even beyond kindergarten.
It's something that we are working on. We want to add more pieces of the parent engagement to the evaluation. So we're in the process of trying to figure out what types of activities or involvement we want to track in order to see what the impact of having a parent who's more involved compared to kids who have parents who don't come as much So we're looking into that.
And not only come to a scheduled something, but the homework and the colors and the numbers and things that, you know, you would perhaps be a given, perhaps may not be a given. And how do you reinforce that all that time at home, given the couple hours that you have them during the day, if that's measured at all? Okay.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
Councilman Tron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The questions that were raised by Councilwoman Baker on that, as far as the numbers on, I think it was your slide number 8, which was actually that if we're, everybody likes to have data, and your slide seems to indicate that the data would support the UPK. But I thought, if I understood it correctly, that you're not necessarily having the same hours in the two programs.
We don't know what the hours are for the non-UPK.
So then, how do we know that we're comparing apples to apples? Then, at that point in time, you're comparing two programs, but if the hours are not the same, I just guess I would have a hard time understanding how we can say the one data point proves a better result than the other.
We know that, so the UPK kids, we know it's a mixture of full-time and part-time kids. And for the non-UPK kids, we know that's a mixture of full-time and part-time kids. But that's all we know.
But we don't know the mix.
No, we don't know.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with
Oh,
you.
yeah.
No, we do not.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, no. Yeah.
Ours could be 50-50.
Yes, I agree. No, that we don't know the answer.
Ours
right.
could be 50-50, theirs could be 70-30. No, we don't know that mix. We don't,
Tweak that data.
because that would come from the other high-quality providers in the county who are, they're not public school districts, they're businesses. They're Cordon Rouge Preschool and Little Bo Peep Preschool.
But you're going to be broadcasting this information saying that somehow their program is not performing to the same degree. I would think that one is they have to defend their model to some degree, because it's an economic model for them. That they would be willing to at least sign up, if nothing else, at least anonymously, to say we're trying to gather data points. I mean, ultimately, I would think both programs, whether UPK or non-UPK, the primary objective is to help the kids improve. I'd like to hope that's a fundamental assumption on both sides, and I cannot help but think that the folks in the non-UPK would want to say, okay, are we missing the boat someplace? So should we be doing something different?
I think it's a valid question. I'm trying to think of.
Can you go into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. So we know where, I'm just envisioning what the sample looks like. Among the non-UPK kids, we do know the site that they're attending. But we don't include any site level information or controls in the models that we've run. So it's a valid question, and it's something that I will take back to our evaluation team at CASE to see if we can add another layer of information to the analysis, or at the very least do a comparison of the sites that are in UPK to the sites that are not in UPK in terms of how many of them are offering only full-time or only part-time or some mix of the two, just to get a high-level sense of whether there are those differences there.
It would seem to me that you've got two categories for both groups, the higher participation hours and the lower, and both, and try to compare apples to apples, at least that way. If you've got a full-time program against another full-time program, that would be a logical comparison. And then those that are running on a part-time basis ought to be compared to another part-time basis and see, okay, does this assumption really hold true? Because I mean, there's a faith-based, and I don't mean religious, I mean
No.
out there, that somehow this one model should work better than the other, just based on our assumption. But it would be nice if data, as we all like data, and if you know that you can grab the data on the left-hand column
Yes.
on your chart, and you can insist on that, and you probably have it. I would like to see it in the future broken down into the full-time and the part-time, just so we can have at least know. And if nothing else, that'll at least tell us, is the UPK program improving for those two cohorts as a minimum?
My hypothesis would be that that does not explain the large gap that we see, but we will certainly look into it.
Look at it, yeah.
Okay, well, then you, as we start to gather data, then you start to gather, as Mrs. Baker was talking about, is there a family support issue that it touches on that success? Is there a quality of the instruction or the teacher-led program that they're coming from a different background? So I would be willing to bet that, as we all know, big data starts to prove out results that can be meaningful in everything. So the more data we get, actually, ultimately, the better off we're going to be in the long run.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I will say that this program, UPK-1 to start, has been heavily evaluated. It's one of the only county programs, I think, that has a history with this data collection and intense analysis I've seen. And the success of the program, I think, is evident when we drill down on what we're doing for families. I can say that UN Ambassador Philip Alston, he did a tour of poverty in America December of 2017 and reported back the wealthiest country in the world ashamedly had, I think, just 40 million people living in poverty. And one of the remedies for that was early education. And that seems, we know the data exists and the science exists, that when you get these children at the youngest of young, that this is where you could try to combat the cycle of poverty. And I think we're doing it right. I think we're doing it well. And I'm glad that we're increasing the number of children. We doubled up. But the question that Council President asked about sustainability, I think ultimately is really what we're here on, because I know we had that influx of dollars from private donors that were enabled us to expand. And what does happen, with this, and are we stabilized for 4 years? I'm hearing, and then what? And I guess we come back and see we've doubled it. That's not universal, and we're striving for that. I think that would be a goal. And so I am happy to see that this is before us with a 2-year contract. And this really are the UPK-1 contracts trying to catch up with the 2 contracts. And
Essentially. Yeah. We're trying not to talk about it that way, but
I know, but I can't help it.
No, that's
right now.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
That's how
right.
my brain is working. So, and this is Health and Human Service dollar contracts originally, and still will be the source of the funding for these. Okay. For these. And then we'll come back and catch up together. Okay. So with that being said, if there's no other questions, I think we need to move this quickly because the period begins 8/1.
So we're very proud of the fact that we're actually here before the contracts start, which is a historical first for us, but we do need them on second reading.
It's huge to get all these contracts together, and the work that goes into these is extraordinary. So I want to thank everybody, this team. I mean, I don't totally understand I just know that it's a lot to get together for us. So we're here. I'm going to make a motion to move this out of committee with a recommendation for second reading suspension.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we're good. We'll see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all this work. And we'll have you come back with some data, maybe somebody from CASE again, because we did have somebody come in from CASE at one point to talk about, and maybe we can follow up with that at another committee meeting for those who want to drill down on data.
We would love to do that.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Maybe next year. You're welcome. Thank you.
I have no miscellaneous business, and we're going to adjourn.